I was saying, the thing about phones for me is that they're a very intimate device. We have them in our pockets. It's kind of like the computer we interact with the most. It's almost certainly, I'd say, the most personal bit of technology we have. It goes into our bedrooms, into our kitchens, into our workplace. It goes everywhere with us. The sort of rush for new models perhaps isn't what it was a couple of years ago, but you certainly don't get queues like this. People waiting for the new Dell Tower or a Lenovo ThinkPad or something like that. And when you think about it, many people spend a lot more money on a phone than they do on a computer. Our phones have replaced our cameras, our calendars, our iPods. For those of you a certain vintage like me, our Walkmans. They offer the best email experience you have and much more. Now, my wife does everything on a phone. She does complicated, long emails on her phone. She kind of does edits of her website on her phone. She does all these kind of things. I'm always offering my laptop saying, hey, do you want to borrow this? And she's like, no, I've got it on my phone. She's a photographer, and the only time she actually busts out her laptop is to edit photos, doing real power tasks. Despite me having my phone set up for my work life really well, I have apps for email, my social media accounts, scheduling, that kind of thing. I actually live a digital life on a laptop. I spend 8 to 10 hours a day on a MacBook screen, looking at the internet that way, through big monitors, that kind of thing. And that means I'm kind of less in touch with a lot more of the audience on a almost increasingly day-by-day basis. It's not the same as many audiences out there see it. And I think we all know the big stat about how April, I think it was last year, Google announced more searches were being done on phones than being done on desktops in many major markets, including much of Europe, the USA, and so on. But some of these stats from on the screen right now from September this year, and so that's sort of now 39% searching on a smartphone only, which is more than the computer only and stuff like this. So it's becoming, obviously, the cliche, the mobile world we live in. So the perspective for SEOs is a little bit behind, I think, some industries. This is quite a famous quote in the design sphere from 3 years ago, from 2013. And we've moved beyond designing websites for desktop only. But have we done the same for SEO? I don't think we have quite as much yet. We didn't have to before, but now we're moving potentially to a mobile-first index. That makes it difficult. This makes it a really exciting time to be in SEO, I feel, both for the technical engineering types and the content creators amongst us. We need our content to be ready to go anywhere, because it can be found by people anywhere around the world on any kind of device, but also it can be physically taken anywhere. Your content can be absorbed on the bus as people head into town, so they come to your shop instead of someone else's, for example. Appreciating this and building a content or SEO strategy with a true mobile content for users has been a battle, I think, between us and our clients more and more. And a month ago, Google dropped the bomb in terms of mobile-first indexing was finally coming, being talked about for over a year, and now they're saying they're doing it. You could hear the predictable panic and overreaction with our industry, as these kind of announcements tend to elicit. It is pretty big news. But while Google described this email as this initial work as, I should say, as experimenting, this is the planned shift to looking primarily at mobile for our content rather than desktop when deciding how to rank results. Why they are doing this, for those of you that maybe aren't aware, is simply that obviously more people search on mobiles and use mobiles. They're seeing them, their services then use desktop. And the common scenario is that people do a search for something, they see a snippet in the search results, go through to the page, and then because that snippet was based on a desktop site, they don't see it when they're on their phone. This isn't a great experience, and we all know that Google is all about rewarding the great search experience, so people keep on using their services and they get to make more money. Now, obviously, this was a bit of a interesting thing for me, because I put forward this topic to the Digital Olympus guys a couple of months ago. Before this announcement, I was just talking about the client relationship, and then suddenly this makes me look really clever because, hey, I look awesome because I've done something that's really timely based on a massive bit of news from Google. Wasn't planned, but I'll make it look good for myself. That's fine, I'll take it. So the way I'm thinking about this is we're well beyond, those of you who've been doing SEO for several years will have heard, I think 2011, 12, 13 and 14 were all the year of mobile. We're kind of beyond that now. But we're actually entering a period where SEO work we do starts by looking at the mobile version of the site, because that's what Google is going to start looking at first of all. Suddenly the mobile version of your site, instead of being a nice to have, is the primary thing. So how do we start thinking mobile first? Well, I think we actually can do a lot of stuff that we do now. We just need to edit some of our habits, some of our processes, ever so slightly. As always with SEO, I think the first place we start thinking mobile first is with our data, by knowing what's going on with our site right now through our analytics. What's happening with mobile right now on your site? How many people are visiting your site by mobile? What kind of experience are they having? Is it good? That kind of area. The home for much of the data we look at, of course, is in Google Analytics itself. And GA is actually device agnostic when you first load up for most reports, which is great. We sort of slice up our traffic by sources and actions rather than by screen size. And that's fine, that's great. I normally want the whole picture, that's really good. But right now, I haven't seen a client come to us, or even with other agency help, where they're actually looking at mobile as a kind of separate view, if you will, or a separate report to actually really understand what's going on. Getting started is actually pretty easy. There's a mobile section within the audience menu on the left-hand side, which brings up your mobile data, and you can pick from all your secondary dimensions from there and start seeing some interesting stuff. More helpful for me is actually using the mobile traffic segment at the top of the screen. Let's literally go into any of your reports that you like to look at and see success of normally, and just see it for mobile traffic. Here, I've actually done a bit of comparison stuff where I've compared the mobile traffic and the desktop and tablet traffic and done them side by side to see what the difference is. Now, here's where I think you start seeing what's going to happen in our industry is that it's going to be really horses for courses. The top graph is for a desktop software site. The primary product is desktop software. So you can see for them, actually, mobile traffic was around 5% because, of course, most searches that are related, for them, for organic traffic are going to be desktop related. They're going to know their desktops when doing it, when it's in mind. The second graph, lower down, which is almost an exact, over the course of traffic, it's about 49-51% split, is a publisher site. So it's 49% mobile. So this is a site where content is the primary product, and they are really, really, reliant on mobile traffic. The publisher has got to be kind of concerned with the mobile experience a lot more because it's a huge part of their audience. Whereas the sort of more B2B desktop site, it's sort of, you honestly think, well, they don't have to worry about mobile. But actually they do, because if we go to a mobile first index and their mobile traffic is particularly low and they haven't got a very good mobile site because they don't think they have to worry about it, if indexing is suddenly based on their mobile site, which isn't as good, then it's good.
If they
Sorry, that's my daughter interrupting me.
Solid.
Yes.
But we need to get solid in lots of food.
We do, but we've got to. Dave's got to finish his talk first, okay?
We got the food.
Sorry, everyone. Right, so back to the actual interesting talk here. So I think what's really cool that we can do here is we can actually look at our content performance for mobile as well. So just by having our mobile segment up and then looking at our landing pages for organic traffic, we can start seeing what's working for mobile. So for example, here are some of our landing pages, great for desktop, but actually when it comes to mobile, they're getting very little traction. Do people bounce off them? Is that time on page no good? What's the user journey? That kind of thing. So I read in the first way to start thinking mobile first is start using analytics more sensibly. I've even, for a couple of clients, set up separate reports and views which are just mobile traffic. So another thing that's quite cool is search analytics within Search Console. So what you can do with this is if you go into the bit, you can actually, you've got this devices section. See where we can filter by queries and pages. We can filter by devices as well. And there's a cool thing which lets you filter and then compare devices. And you can see here that I've for a site I've got here, I've had to blank the data obviously. You've got desktop clicks versus mobile clicks. Now this again is our desktop software site, and they've got huge amounts of desktop clicks and very little mobile. Another important aspect for many of us is using visibility tools. So the things like Search Metrics, Systrix, SEMrush, stuff like that. This is really cool. But when it comes to mobile, there's a few differences between them. Lots of tools give us mobile visibility, but we have to adjust how we look at them. Are there differences in performance for important resources? Are there keyword topics where mobile users don't see us? That's the kind of information we want to get out. So we use Systrix at Screaming Frog, and that does a nice job. It lets me see all the keywords that sound like from mobile searches and indexed sort of visibility charts. It can then build a report for smartphone as well as desktop and overall, should I wish, and even let sort of compare the two. So I can build an immediate picture of what's working on desktop and what's working on mobile. SEMrush, which is lower down the right-hand side here, is one of my favorite SEO tools. Full stop. I use it for competitor and keyword intelligence all the time. But when it comes to this, if you're one of the guys, if you're listening in the US, good news, they've actually got separate mobile reports for the US, but it's been out for a while, but it hasn't made it, as far as I can see, to other markets yet. But I'm hoping it'll come soon. Next up, there's something that jumps to many people's minds, especially now, about the mobile first index, is thinking technically about their website and how mobile first is going to affect that. Now, I think the first thing to make clear, of course, with this big news that came out last month, is that the change that we're seeing is about indexing, not ranking. And there's been a few articles that really get that a little bit confused. So it's about Google will consider the content's format and suitability for the device you're searching on. Still, the mobile friendliness, absolutely. But when it comes to actually ranking content for either a mobile or a desktop search, your mobile site is what's going to be used, unless you haven't got one, and then it's going to be the desktop, sorry, I should say. So there's a couple of articles here. There's one from the SEM Post, Jennifer Slade, which was on the day after the announcement was made, which had lots of Q's and A's with the guys from Google, like John Mew and so on, and Gary Eels on Twitter, which is really useful. And an article from a couple of weeks ago on Search Engine Journal by Ryan Jones, which is really good at explaining the technical differences and what's going on. When Google started talking about mobile indexing just over a year ago, they originally talked about having a separate mobile index, but then they've kind of changed their minds. It's still going to be a single index. But instead of their desktop site being the primary version, the next thing I think is really important to consider from a technical point of view is understanding how you are technically delivering your mobile site. You're either going to have a responsive design, dynamic serving of content, or separate URL, a separate mobile website. Understanding how those three different things work and what you can do to solve them and make them better and make them, sort of optimal for this new change for a mobile first index is really important. So if we have if things like vary HTTP headers, rel equals alternate tags, and blocking resources sounds a bit scary, don't be scared. I managed to get my head around it pretty quickly. I'm sure everyone else can as well. But now's the time to start learning. Now's when it's going to start becoming really important. So if we have a mobile site, we need to make sure that it provides the same content experience as our desktop one, as close as we possibly can get it. Now, sites that are responsive will usually be absolutely fine. That's an important thing to say. Responsive sites will normally be treated exactly the same because they've got exactly the same content. But sites that are a different experience on mobile, such as dynamic serving sites and ones on separate mobile domains, we'll need to look at exactly what they're offering and make sure they understand. A core part of the change between mobile sites and desktop sites is the number of internal links. And this is something that, by doing a few comparisons with our clients, we've seen just by crawling them both and looking at the number of internal links on the desktop site, the number of internal links on the mobile site, it's a huge difference in number. And internal links, we know, are actually a small but cumulatively quite important signal to Google, both a bit of ranking and for helping them discover the most important content. So one of the first things I think you can see is you can have a lot less internal links on when you start doing mobile first indexing. You have a lot of sites with a massive, huge navigation section, and yet when it comes to the mobile version, there's a small hamburger logo in the corner, and then it's a really quick experience. There's only maybe sort of 10 links compared to 80 or 90 in some cases with our clients. And so those pages that are lost all their internal links, you're going to have to look at your internal linking structure and make sure you are getting crawlers to the right points. If, when it comes to, sort of using like less internal links, it can be a good thing because actually sometimes you're diluting and you're sort of sending too many links from important pages to many places. But actually, I think a lot of people are going to find that important bits of content might suffer because they've no longer got the linking they once had. You've got a publishing site, well, yep, you can still play with AMP. AMP versions can still be used if you want to take advantage of that resource, as they are seen as different to main site versions. I know there's a lot of divided opinion on AMP as a tactic, but if you're going for it now, it shows you're probably thinking more mobile first. So, you know, it's not necessarily a bad position to be in. Unfortunately, it also means you can't use AMP to get around a mobile domain or anything like that, because it actually, if you've already got a mobile website that's not very good, plus AMP, Google's still going to be using the mobile site instead of the AMP one, and so on. And if you only have a desktop site, it's like, oh, I'll keep on using my desktop site to be ranked. If you've got AMP, then AMP will actually overrule that desktop site. Again, check those articles I shared before, which go into a bit more detail explaining some of this. Just like mobile Geddon, if you don't have a mobile version, don't completely panic. I think that's an important thing to say, guys. You've got a bit of time to get it built. Don't panic too much. So how do you start building a picture of all the potential issues? Well, I think there's a really cool thing that you can do with fetch and render on Search Console. This works really nicely. People have been using it, I think I've seen it mentioned lots of times, obviously desktop, but now instead of using the desktop Googlebot for fetching and rendering your pages and Google making sure Google can see exactly what you want, now it's going to be more important to start seeing the mobile version. And with all these tools within Search Console, such as crawl errors and things like that, at the moment, it defaults to desktop, but I'm wondering if Google will switch it to defaulting to mobile when the mobile index first actually launches. So a little bit more on scale. If you've got a big site, you want to do something more at scale than individual checks on Search Console. So I'm happy to show a bit of a preview of the next release of the SEO Spider, which is kind of useful for this in a nice fortuitous circumstance for me. Using this, you can check all the pages on your site for mobile rendering, plus a bit of scraping to check all your product content is showing to the mobile version of Googlebot, which is really cool. So this is going to be the new version of Screen Frog Spider coming out hopefully in a week or two's time. Within it, you go to configuration and then you go to rendering, which is available now. You bring up, you do JavaScript rendering within this, and then pick Googlebot mobile smartphone. So you can see here on the right hand side, I've got a little preview screen, which is kind of mobile size, which is what we want to be doing. And then if we do our HTTP header user agent option and say, I want to crawl my target website as Googlebot for smartphones, make sure it's for smartphones post April 2008, April 18th, 2016. That's when the change was made. This will mean we're now going to crawl our site as Googlebot and do a JavaScript rendering of all our pages as a smartphone size screen. So we're going to see what our Google sees for a smartphone. And this is what it looks like. So the box in the kind of middle with a red arrow pointing to it is the key thing here. This is a little rendering screen, which shows, just like the fetches Google, it allows us to see for every single page in our site, the rendered page. And we can see there's any blocked resources and things like that. We can also do all our usual checks in Screaming Frog to make sure that what Googlebot sees is everything we expect them to see. Now, more advanced users of the Spider will know that you can do custom snippets and search for custom things. You can search for custom bits of stuff, code, such as a common example is looking for Google Analytics tracking code being on all your pages. But you can also use it for scraping. If you find the XPath bit for your product description, for example, you could put that in as your custom snippet, crawl your website. Say you've got a big commerce website which does lots of different things to content on a mobile version. I want to see what Google sees, both for the rendering and just have be able to put out a list of all the product descriptions we're actually serving. I can do this now and actually see what a mobile first index will make our website look like to Google. It's a good way of getting around this. I'm pretty excited about this coming out in the next couple of weeks. Of course, you want to be mobile friendly, so there's tools for doing that as well. It's a small ranking signal. It's that's still a thing. I'm sure the signal will become more important in the future, as well as the important one from Google. Varvy.com has a mobile check, which actually comes up with some nice information as well, and it's got a lot of good learning resources. So I recommend checking that out. And of course, there's mobile errors as well. This is a report again within Search Console. So if you don't want to be going around checking through the site's actually mobile friendly or not, Google will tell you which pages aren't mobile friendly. Speed with the flip-flop of which version of your site is going to be used to rank. A lot of folks are going to have to look at page speed. A lot of people have done it for desktop like crazy because, hey, we want our desktop to be really fast because it's good for users and good for Google. Well, now, same thing. Make sure your mobile version is really good and really fast. I think many surveys we've all seen on page speed have shown that, the longer it takes a page to load, the more money you lose, the more people drop off and so on. So yeah, really do be thinking about speed, but again, twist it now so you're more concerned about speed on your mobile version than your desktop version. Big part of thinking mobile first, of course, is looking at who you're optimizing the site for. And as an industry, I think we've started actually, knowing that we need to be using personas, and it's all a little bit fluffy, but it's a definitive breakdown of our audience, kind of archetypes of who our site is designed towards. But I'm afraid now I'm saying many of us have finally managed to get to this point. We probably need to look at them again, which might make some of you groan. As well as looking at our audience by the products or service they're after, we want to consider the device they typically use to complete this task. So there's two ways of looking at this. You can take your existing personas and assign common device types to those tasks. You can get some clues to this from Google Analytics and so on. Or you can start building new personas. I know, that's more work. But you can start building new ones and factor in your devices from there. So B2B sites, such as our desktop software provider from earlier, will often have the majority of personas using computers. Your keyword research will then really benefit from understanding this kind of thing. We also want to consider the location and context of the search within that persona as well. So where will this person be doing? Will they be searching in the office, at home, that kind of thing. There's a lot to be said about personas, but there was actually a superb talk this morning at Digital Olympus on this very topic by Gianluca Fiorelli. I apologize, Gianluca, for probably completely mangling your surname. You'll find there's a video that's soon, obviously, on Digital Olympus. But grab the slides now. I really recommend it. It was a really great talk. If you haven't done any personas yet, there's a bunch of resources out there for doing really quick, dirty ones. We don't need full-on PR style ones because we're not doing the same level of work as PRs when it comes to it. We know we're sort of leaving them for a specific purpose. But there's some resources on the screen here. PersonaRap.io, Up Close and Persona. The YouGov website is really good for this. There's some good articles as well to help you. So get started with those. Perhaps even more useful for SEO than personas, which you can often steal and base on from other marketing departments, are user stories. User stories for SEO. In fact, having personas is almost more a detailed way of getting these user stories. We want to know how people are searching within our niche, what they want to do once they arrive on a site, and what their content experience should be. And we want to add to this now what their mobile experience of this could possibly be. User stories sound like horrible, fluffy things that can bring an SEO out in hives, I know, but actually they should be kept very simple, precisely because we want just to get to the point in SEO. Very matter of fact. We want to use these for keyword research and content planning, and they're really, really useful. I can't recommend them enough. So you can use GA, user research, existing personas more to help build these out. And the classic user story from UX and content strategy disciplines has an actor, has a narrative and a goal. So it has I want to, so that, and I can achieve something. So I suggest that we add my third one here, context. So as X, I want to Y, using Z so that I can A. So what am I, who am I? I want to do something. I'm going to do it in this context, using this device in this location, so that I can achieve something else. That is the user stories, and these are really good. So you've got user stories in place. The next likely kind of thing we want to be doing is actually going, what's the content we're going to produce? What are we actually going to do mobile friendly? How is mobile friendly the latest evolution of publishing, if you will? And I think this is actually really key for me. If you can't tell already, this is actually something that really is exciting stuff, I think, because it feels like a lot of articles on this topic are about, the downward, sort of what we're going to have less desktop searches because we're mobile first and all this kind of thing. I think this actually just means we've got more and more searches. We're not going to have the same size pie cut smaller. We're going to actually have a much bigger pie as people are doing searches in new and different ways. So after, we've got everything in place, we've got our user stories and so on. The next likely thing you'll be looking at is keyword research. Find those topics you'll be building content around. And if you haven't looked at your keyword research for your site or one of your clients, the last couple of years, now's the time to revise it because things are really changing. What does someone looking for your product or service ask differently on phone and desktop? You can see from some of Google's latest data, this is again from September this year, there's a clear difference when people look for a similar theme on different devices. We're looking at similar stuff, but what we're looking for, the context of it, is quite different. So we can be thinking about our content experience in different ways. We want to be aware of new streams of keywords that we might be suitable for, queries that would have had little volume only several years ago. So here we can see for a search term such as pizza restaurant, to follow from our previous example, that has heavily localized terms here in the UK, commonly associated with local intent. But it's also clear there's mobile terms such as near me. In fact, there's been arguments made that Google has created a near me industry, as it comes up and auto-suggests so much when you're searching on phone. But there are new types of keywords that when you've got a term that can be on mobile and intent and local intent, really has new variants, new options for us to target. And I think the next thing to worry about, of course, once we've got our targets in place, is to go, right, what content formats really work? Does your content layout actually help a user achieve that goal we set out in our user story? Here, all of that fundamental UX stuff that we're really starting to do in SEO needs to be reconsidered and applied to our mobile site. So font size, use of imagery, videos loading properly, no flash on most mobiles, the use of spacing and so on. Part of the conversation around the mobile first index was actually, we know that on desktop, Google is saying don't use, if you use concertinas and tabs and so on, that content might not count towards ranking, might be in it, might not count. On mobile, they've said where stuff is hidden for UX, that will still count towards ranking. So a really great example for me is that the example of Wikipedia here. The content is all mostly hidden on load apart from the introduction, but it's easy to see, it's quick opening and closing of each section, it's really smooth, all crawled, indexed and considered, fast to load, and overall a fantastic user experience. Amazon is another good example. I know Amazon are good examples for all kinds of things, but they've got a big thing going on. So what they've got is each of their read more bits take you to a new page with full reading, so users get to set the exact bit they're interested in. But the page is huge. For a mobile page, this scrolls on for ages and ages and ages, just like the mobile desktop pages do. So actually, it's not a lightweight version. You've actually got the full desktop content experience, but in a perfectly great mobile first, easy to read format. Fantastic. Finally, from a publisher point of view, we've got the Ringer, which uses Medium as its CMS. It's a super example of heavier content done in a mobile legible format. I think it's important to remember that content not only changes on mobile due to its format, but it changes how we distribute it. Social media is the biggest driver of distribution of mobile, and email delivered right into people's hands, literally in this case, is a hugely powerful and personal way to get content to your audience. So, the mobile experience is much more intimate. So when you're distributing content to people, you're going to, sort of maybe change your tactic a little bit, or think about as a publisher how you're going to really appeal to people, rather than showing the desktop experience, which is going to be somewhat different. I think an important note on mobile, just generally, is that it reminds me on social media is, of course, you thought the distractions were bad, taking away from your content on desktop. On mobile, it's so much worse because the mobile phone is the biggest distraction from your desktop content. And suddenly someone's looking at your content and they've got notifications, they've got all kinds of things going on, they've got probably listening to music or a podcast at the same time. Fact is that, we're going to have to work even harder at making our content pop, making titles work, all that kind of thing on mobile to make sure people don't get bored by whatever's flashing in front of them. Finally, how do we address mobile user needs? So we know what the content formats, what kind of content should we be building? Now, without wanting to just rely on Google stuff, and because frankly, they only give you so much stuff I know, but I think the thing with Google sections is a really good starting point. If you're thinking about this, if you're a creative person, want some ideas, the thing with Google section, which has got collections on micro moments, which is there still about mobile, also a section on mobile itself, and there's a lot of crossover between those two. If you go to these sections, then there's lots and lots of stuff to do. The famous ones, the micro moments, or I want to know moments, I want to go moments, I want to do moments, and I want to buy moments. How do you create content experiences that work for these? Well, the first thing I think you want to do is refer to your user stories, then compare it to these. But beyond that, it's sort of looking out and doing some actual research yourself, looking at your audience, going into your analytics data, doing some genuine audience research by asking some questions. There was obviously talking in the personas earlier about asking, doing surveys and so on of your actual audience. That's a great way to actually start working out what the intent your audience has of your content on mobile. You should be looking at that here. But the thing with Google, it's a good place to get a bit of inspiration to get you going. Any content building SEOs out there will see this content and use it to think of ideas for their own site. It really just inspires you, I think. But what better way of doing this than actually knowing what Google's quality raters want? The quality search rate evaluated guidelines were leaked last year, and everyone concentrated on the first section, which was about main quality rating guidelines. There's a whole section on mobile user needs starting on page 56. And you can use this to match up your user stories and make sure you have the types of content they talk about useful. So there's a whole section on there which talks about the different types of mobile content. It gives them names and so on. So if you can build stuff towards that, then it works really well. So I think the final bit is to summarize the concept is this. Google summarized by saying, be there, be useful, be quick. And that's a nice starting point. But I think you can take your mobile site, the hub of how you think about your content, make it your mobile one, and then start building something better. So the key takeaway for this is that we need to radically change what we do. Not really. We only need to change things a little bit, but just start looking at the mobile first. The same best practices still apply, but we just need to do with the mobile site as our primary asset. That's what we care about now. And that's it from me. Thank you very much for your time, and I apologize for the interruptions from my daughter.